Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Mika and today I'm telling you all about every single book I read in January. So this video is very late. I'm aware of that. We are already halfway through February and I have absolutely no idea where the time went. I blinked and now we're here. But this is the first video that I'm uploading this year, so I hope you guys have all had a great new year. I hope you got all your holiday travels in. Hope you ate some good food, spent time with the family. I don't know what it is so far about this year, but I have been reading so much, which is a huge change from last year. I didn't even meet my Goodreads goal. If you're curious, I think my goal was like 70 books or 60 books and I only read 54, which is still a lot, of course, but like, I don't know, last year was just not the reading year for me. I was planning on doing my 10 top best and worst books of 2023, but I didn't even feel that passionate about like majority of the books that I read last year, so I just felt like that just wouldn't have been the best video to film for not only me but like you guys would have been like, girl, what the hell is this? But we are here. It is a clean slate for 2024. Later on in this video I want to go over some of my reading goals for the rest of the year because I truly need to stick to these if I want to have a good reading year. And I know a lot of people comment on my TikTok and my Instagram asking me when I'm coming back to YouTube and when I'm going to be more consistent, and honestly it's one of those things where I feel like I never really like leave YouTube. I just don't film as often as I should. So if you guys want more consistent content from me, definitely follow me on Instagram and TikTok, which are all linked below in the description. Okay, enough blabbing. Let's get into the books that I read in January. I don't think I read a single book that I own physically, which is going to be one of my solutions and reading goals for 2024 is to work on that, because this little thing right here, my Kindle, she has me in such a chokehold. I genuinely forget that I own a whole personal library sometimes, and Kindle Unlimited has like the best selection of books ever, so I am just always reading on here and I need to start reading my books physically. So most of these books, I'm pretty sure almost every single book I read in January I don't own physically, which is crazy. Okay, I read 13 books in total for the month of January. Let's start off with the first book, which is the first book in a series actually, and that is Half-Blood by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first book in her Covenant series, and I'm such a sucker for older YA paranormal fantasy romance, whatever you want to call it, and I think Jennifer L. Armentrout does YA paranormal romance so well. I wish we got more of that than whatever the hell she's doing with From Blood and Ash and like her new adult fantasy. It's not really my cup of tea. I've tried to read it, and because I'm such a huge fan of Jennifer's old series, I thought I would absolutely love her new stuff, and it just doesn't really hit the same for me. So I decided to reread the entire Covenant series. So I reread the first 4 books except for the last book because I kind of got tired of it. First book was Half-Blood. I love this series. It's so fun. So in this world we have purebloods and we have half-bloods, and the purebloods are the children of the Hematoi, who are descendants of gods and mortals. So when 2 Hematoids get together, they create 1 pureblood, and then if a Hematoid gets with a human, they create a half-blood. Purebloods have godlike powers, so fire magic, water magic, whereas the half-bloods are a little bit lesser, and they really only have 2 options in this world. It's either to become trained centennials who get really good at fighting and go and hunt demons, or they become servants in the homes and houses of the pures, which is horrible if you ask me. Like, what the hell? The main character, Alexandra, is a half-blood, and she is on the run with her mother before having to be dragged back to the Covenant after a tragedy hits, and she is dragged back by no other than Aiden, who is a pureblood, and he is basically tasked with keeping her in check and training her to get back to where she was before she ran away. Also, like, the biggest rule in this world is that purebloods and half-bloods can't be together, like they can't be in a relationship. And if you don't know me by now, I love a good forbidden relationship. I don't know if I did a good job at explaining that, but I really love this series. Even when I was rereading it, it still gave me that buzz that I got the first time. If I can reread the series a few months after reading it, or like a year after reading it, and it still gives me that buzz, you're doing something right. It came out in 2011 and I feel like it still holds up to this day. This is like a mix between Percy Jackson and Vampire Academy. I feel like that is the best way I can explain it. Oh, and the Mortal Instruments, because she's like hunting demons, but not really. It's just like the hunting demons part actually. I would say it's more a mixture of Percy Jackson and Vampire Academy. Jennifer L. Armentrout is like known for taking very popular tropes and premises and just making it her own, and I'm not mad at it, because it's like, if you can outdo the doer sometimes, then like, who am I to complain? So I reread the first book, gave that one 4 stars. I also read Pure, which is the second book, Deity, Elixir, which is the novella, and then Apollyon, which is the 4th book in the series, and I gave all of those 4 stars. Okay, next up, I read another series, and this one is Blood of My Monster by Rena Kent. If I had $1 for every single time I saw someone tweet about a Rena Kent book on Twitter, I would be so filthy rich. The girlies just love Rena Kent. So I decided to just give the series a try. I actually saw someone say that this was the best mafia romance series they've ever read. And like, while I definitely don't agree, I did have fun reading it. Actually, I'm saying that very loosely because I had fun reading the first book. This book is about a girl who is also running from her past, and she has to enlist in the Russian army and pretend to be a man. So she's undercover for her, not only her sake, but her family's sake. So she meets Kirill, who is a captain. Is he a captain? She meets Kirill, who is a superior in the Russian army, and basically gets him to help her become stronger and learn how to fight better and defend herself better. But he doesn't know that she's pretending to be a man. Kirill also has some secrets he's hiding, and suddenly he is called back to New York for some mafia leader duties. Sasha sees that as an opportunity to kind of learn some more about her past, so she decides to go with him. And yeah, that's what I'll say about the first book. I gave this one 4 stars. I actually really liked it. It was one of those things where the writing, listen, do not pick this up for the writing. That is like the least thing that I liked about this book. The writing was barely comprehensible, but I was so intrigued with the plot, and I just kept wanting to know what happened next. Like every single time I saw something that gave me the book ick, I almost put the book down, but then I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I was like, no man, I have to finish this book. And that's what I did. I literally read it so fast. I'm pretty sure I read it in a few hours. It was very fun. Now the next book is where it started to go downhill. The next one is called Lies of My Monster, and there's just something that really pisses me off about a woman like fighting for a man and fighting for his attention or like groveling to him. Oh my god, that makes me so like, ooh, I get the shivers just thinking about it, especially if the man doesn't even deserve her. And that's what the second book was giving, you know what I mean? But again, the plot had me seated and it had me enthralled, so I gave this one 3 stars. Then the last book is Heart of My Monster, and it just went downhill from here. I'm not even kidding when I say I wish I could give you guys very detailed and well thought out descriptions of what happened in this book, and I wish, you know, I could sit here and critically tell you guys what I liked and didn't like about it. But I can't even do that because it was so unmemorable that I genuinely have no clue what happened. All I know is that it was a train wreck that I could not look away from. That's so, I feel like I'm being so harsh and so mean. Like, listen, if you like Rena Kent, I love that for you. And I'm not even gonna sit here and lie and say I'm not gonna ever read one of her books again. But I just feel like to be called one of like the best mafia series someone has ever read is so just baffling to me. But also, I'm never gonna yuck on anyone's yum. So like, if you loved it, then I love that for you. It had potential until it didn't. That's what I'm gonna say about the Blood of My Monster trilogy. Maybe if you guys have any Rena Kent recommendations, I'll read another Rena Kent book. Matter of fact, I'll do a whole video on it if you really want me to. But we need to raise our standards, even when it comes to mafia books, because I know you're thinking, Mika, it's a mafia book. You expecting anything more is like your first mistake. And so then I say you're right, but also I've read some mafia books that were like really good. And on that topic, an example of a great mafia book, Runaway by Bazooka. So I read this on Wattpad, which is crazy because you would think that a book on Wattpad wouldn't outsell a published mafia book, but it did. My friend had been trying to get me to read this book for so long, and I finally decided to pick it up because after I read the Monster trilogy by Rena Kent, I was like, anything is possible. The world is my oyster. There's nothing but going up from here, and I was right. So Runaway is about a girl named Josie who is running away from her life in a cult. She's going to New York to find her brother named Daniel and also attend NYU. But Daniel isn't in New York, and she runs into this guy, Nico Blaine, who happens to be the only key to her finding out what happened to her brother and where he could possibly be. This book was absolutely insane. I loved the cult aspect in this book. It was really well written. Like, I never really gave much thought to what being in a cult would be like, but how it was written in this book is exactly what I would envision it to be. And I will admit it was very hard to read at times, especially I want to say within like the first 30% of the book. Like, it was kind of dark. It was darker than I was expecting it to be. I would highly suggest looking at the trigger warnings. I believe the author does put a list of all the trigger warnings before the story starts on Wattpad. I was really happy with this. I feel like I haven't read a good mafia romance in quite some time, and I was also reading it while going through like a lot of personal stuff in my life, and it was just such a great way to like forget and sit down and know that I have some good food to come to at the end of the day. I will say it was a bit too long for my liking, but I have to give it the benefit of the doubt because again, it's on Wattpad. It's an unedited book, so I feel like if this book were to ever actually get published, it would be edited down a lot, most likely, and feel a lot more put together. But other than that, I had a really good time reading it, and if you guys are in the market for a new fun mafia romance book, I really suggest it. Like, I think some books on Wattpad are very well written compared to like some of the books that we get on Kindle Unlimited nowadays. It's the second book in like this series by that author, but all of the books can be read as standalones. I gave this one 4.5 stars. Okay, on that note, I was still really in a mafia romance mood, and looking back at what I read in January, I'm kind of just like, you can tell I was going through it. You really can, because the books that I was reading, I just feel like do not really reflect my taste at all, but I just needed like something fun and quick and easy to read, and this is what I was working with. Which brings us to the next book, Broken Vows, and this is by Scarlett King and Nadine O'Keefe. Now this was a sapphic mafia romance. I've never ever in my life heard of a sapphic mafia romance until I laid eyes on this book, and to be quite frank, we need more of them. So this book is about two rival gangs, and the main character is about to get married in order to unite them. However, she does not want to get married. She is not having it. So on the day of her wedding, she runs away, and so the enforcer of the rival gang that she just ruined the union of is sent to find her and bring her back to them. This was a really quick read because while the romance was really good, the plot was kind of lackluster. It felt like a lot was happening but nothing was happening all at the same time. That's just such a horrible way of explaining something. This is kind of when I started to get a little bit of fatigue with the mafia romances, and one of my biggest pet peeves is once the climax of the story hits, the author feels like they have to like wrap up the story really quickly, and I feel like that happens with most mafia romances, but this one specifically. And for it being 300 pages, I feel like that's more than enough to like wrap everything up and it not feel extremely rushed. So because of that, I gave it 3 stars. Okay, so next up, I'm literally already laughing because the next book that I read was just, it was definitely something. It was definitely a book. So I read Loathing You by Amina Khan, and let's just talk about how this was a direct ripoff of Tris Venom by Penelope Douglas. I'm okay with, you know, getting inspiration from an author and, you know, being like, oh, I really like that plot idea, let me do something similar. No, I kid you not, word for word, bar for bar, this book was the exact same thing as Tris Venom by Penelope Douglas, except Tris Venom is actually really good. I was essentially reading the same book in a different font. Yeah. I feel like I've been so negative in this video, and you guys, I promise, if you're new to my channel, I'm usually not this negative. I never like talking bad about books. I usually DNF a book before it even gets to this point, but like, I don't know. January was definitely a strange month. If you're not familiar with the plot of Loathing You or Tris Venom, I'll explain it to you right now because it's essentially the same exact thing, like I said. Oh my god. So our main character Adeline is bisexual, and she has been absolutely annihilated, bullied, made fun of her entire life by every student at Richmond Academy. And then we have Juliet, who is like the people's princess of this school. She is the heir to a multi-millionaire, and her single life goal is to just make Adeline's life absolute hell. Which I'm like, I'm sorry, if I was the heiress to a multi-million-dollar empire, what do I look like bullying you? Girl, you already have everything. Like, why do you need to make someone else's life hell? And I'm saying this as if I did not eat up Tris Venom, which is a very similar premise, but I think it was just the way that it's done that really irked my gears. And I'm a huge fan of bully romances. I really liked them. I like Zodiac Academy, Tris Venom. I can like list so many bully romances off the top of my head that I've read in the last few years that I've enjoyed, and this is probably the first one I didn't like. With Tris Venom, I feel like a lot of things that happened in the book and the reason why the characters acted a certain way that they did were explained, and it made sense for the characters. In this book, the characters don't really have a reason for acting the way that they act, and if they did have a reason, it's like the most out of pocket, dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I want to tell you so bad, but if you do plan on reading this, which I really recommend you don't, but if you do plan on reading it, I want you to experience it. It was like reading the explanations for why some of the characters were, you know, being homophobic and literally treating the main character like she was the dirt beneath their shoes. And I was like, clearly there must be like a really good reason or like some pent up, you know, anger with themselves as to why they're treating her this way. There's a scene between the main character Adeline and Juliet's mom, and the way that this older lady was talking to the main character, I was clutching my pearls, you guys. I genuinely was appalled. I was reading this and I was like, I can put aside realism for a second, but I've never in my life imagined a 40-50-year-old woman having beef with a teenager, like ever. And maybe that's just because no, there's no excuse. I genuinely just can't imagine it. And it also just wasn't written good. That's it. That's it. There are literal lines from Tristic's Venom that are fully in this book. Like, and when I say fully in this book, I mean literally the author took the entire line from Tristic's Venom and wrote it in this one. If you want a sapphic bully romance, don't read this book. Read Tristic's Venom by Penelope Douglas, and I promise you, you'll be doing yourself a favor. I forgot to say when I gave Loathing You, that's how much I like did not like that book. I gave it 2 stars. Matter of fact, I should have given it 1, but I was being nice. So there you go. Okay, so the next 2 books are also sapphic books, but I actually enjoyed them, so things are starting to look up. The first one was The Follow Through, and this is by Michelle L. Rivera. This is about these 2 girls who were childhood best friends. They made a promise to each other that they were going to marry each other when they got older, until the mom of one of the girls walked to the room, saw that, and said, "Not on my watch," and basically told them that they couldn't be friends anymore. One of the girls ends up moving away, and fast forward a few years later, she ends up coming back for senior year at their high school, and all of the angsty feelings are kind of just like brought back. I think this book was so cute. It was super angsty. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I had so much fun reading it. I literally inhaled it. I'm pretty sure I also read this in a few hours. It was definitely friends to strangers to enemies to lovers, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super fun. Okay, and then that brings us to the last book that I read in January. And the last book I read was Blurred Lines, which is by Olivia Lucas. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. This one was like a romantic comedy. The main character is on her way to a job interview, and she's just having an absolute horrible day. She ends up bumping into a stranger and essentially snaps at her, only for her to find out that that is the boss and the lady that would be doing her job interview. This is like a typical office romance, and I just love the idea of like all the overdone straight romances that we get. We need a sapphic version of it. Matter of fact, we need a sapphic version of it, we need a black version of it, and we need a gay version of it. I think books should be for the girlies, gays, and theys, and that's exactly what this one was giving me. I was genuinely giggling the entire time while reading this, kicking my feet in the air. It was just a grand old time, and it's under 300 pages, so it was super quick and super easy to read, and it was the perfect book to end the roller coaster of a month I had with every other book I read in January. I don't know what came over me. I kind of blacked out there in the middle of this video when I started talking about the books that I didn't enjoy. This month I will definitely come back to you guys with some cohesive thoughts about the books that I read and what I liked and didn't like about them. So now I want to get into some reading goals I have for 2024. First things first, I want to start reading the books that I own physically more than the books that I have on my Kindle. And the thing is that I do have a lot of the books that I own physically also on my Kindle, so it's not like I really have an excuse. I just think I forget that like my bookshelves are actually my oyster and I can fully read them whenever I want to. So I'm going to be more consistent with that and actually look through the books that I have, because there's just so many and they're only going to pile up more and more if I don't get to reading. Another thing I really want to stop doing is reading books solely based on their popularity, or specifically their Goodreads reviews, how many times I see it on Twitter or TikTok, because I think that's really what led to my downfall last month. Loathing You, for example, was a book that I saw all over TikTok and people being like, oh my gosh, this sapphic romance is so good, it's better than Tristic's Venom by Penelope Douglas, and I fell for it, and look at where that landed me. Same thing with the Blood of My Monster trilogy. I really enjoyed the first book, but the last 2 just didn't really do it for me, and I still read the entire thing because it was popular, and I was like, I mean, people have to like it for a reason, right? Even if it's popular, it doesn't mean that I necessarily will like it. So I need to stop just reading it solely based off of that. The next one is read more fantasy books. Now, I've already started to practice this in February. I have done a pretty good job, if I do say so myself, at reading fantasy books. I mean, I started this channel because I mostly read fantasy and like people around me didn't read fantasy that much. I think I'm starting to have like a romance burnout where I've just constantly been reading romance books and I really just need something a little bit more, and fantasy will always be like my favorite top genre. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be more consistent with that and read more of it. That brings me to my next point, which is I want to read things out of my comfort zone, like horrors and classics, which I don't know, with classics it's definitely difficult for me because I feel like I already read so many classics in high school for like my AP classes, and I'm kind of just like over it. But sometimes I hear about a classic that I didn't get to read in high school and I'm like, that kind of sounds like something I'd really like, so I'm gonna try them out. What's the harm in trying? And then my last goal for 2024 is to not force myself to read simply because I feel like I have to read a lot. That I think is really what threw me back last year. I just felt like I had to reach a certain goal. I felt like I had to read certain types of books. I felt like I had to read a certain amount of books a month, and it really just like made me lose my motivation with everything. It made me lose my motivation with filming things. It made me lose my motivation with reading. And in December of last year, I really just thought to myself, and I was like, you know what, there are no expectations for you. No one is like making you read these books. No one is making you sit down and film a video about these books. Like, you don't owe that to anybody. So read what you want to read, when you want to read it, however you want to read it. And I think that's why I have been flourishing with how fast I've been reading so far this year. I mean, granted, not all of them have been great books, but I'm still reading. Like, I haven't fell into a reading slump regardless of the not so great books that I've read. So let me know what your reading goals are. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, and let me know if there are any book recommendations that you guys want me to read down below in the comments. This year I'm going to try to do as many monthly wrap-ups as I can, just to, you know, give you guys some content and also let out all the steam of what I've been thinking on these books, because sometimes I forget that I can literally just turn on my camera and talk to you guys and I don't have to like call my friends and annoy the hell out of them every time I finish a book. Don't forget to subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video, and also follow me on all of my socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, which will all be linked down below in the description. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you all in my next video. Mwah. Bye.